other bills because it is good, sensible policy.
David Clark.
Mr Speaker, I think that member who's just taken his seat has demonstrated clearly that he hasn't been following the debate so far. Many of the points he accused us of not covering were covered very eloquently by my colleague Phil Twyford earlier in the debate. I shall come further to the matter of asset sales, which he raised as I continue on. This issue of Forrester Heights is an issue of concern for many locals, and that is why we in the Labour Party are keeping a close eye on it. The question of whether it is properly reserve land or endowment land is a live question, as my colleague the Honourable David Parker alluded to earlier. And the Waitaki ratepayers and concerned citizens and various other folks in the community there are wanting to make sure that the right decisions are made. And who can blame them? We've asked for local democracy, and this is local democracy in action. There are many locals in Aomaru who believe that in the 19th century the land was made a reserve for all time, that sheep grazed on it, that it was there as a reserve, that it was not endowment land. Now, we will hear in Select Committee, and Labour will support this bill to Select Committee to hear this debated, but we will hear this debated because it is a live issue. It's contentious in the local community. So there is an ongoing dispute about whether or not an error occurred. It is not even completely clear that an error occurred, and therefore whether or not this piece of land should fall under the Reserves Act. And so those people who are upset say that the Council has refused to provide evidence of the error the Crown allegedly made. Now, if this is true, this is concerning indeed. This should be a transparent process. I have little doubt that it will be a transparent process once it gets to Select Committee, but these are contentious issues. It's also alleged that the Council granted themselves a consent without a full public consenting process. And again, locals are niggly about this. They feel that, again, they deserve full transparency in these processes, and they question whether the consenting in this way is lawful. And so there are some in the community who suggest it may be advisable that an independent commissioner be appointed to examine the Council's granting of consents to itself. Now, these kinds of suggestions show the strength of feeling in the community, and that is why we should have this full debate at Select Committee, Mr Speaker. We understand that Ngāi Tahu supports this claim, this changing of the status and clarifying the land as endowment land, if indeed that's the right thing to do. But it's also true that Waitaha have concerns about this land, and they are yet to be aired, and they will, I am sure, be aired also in the Select Committee. We know the history of the bill, or some members have alluded to it. This piece of legislation, these changes, were contained in a previous rolled bill that currently languishes at number 29 on the order paper. It is not progressing, Mr Speaker. But this Select Committee process should progress this matter and bring it to a fruitful conclusion. And I would encourage the Select Committee to consider going down to Aomaru and seeing the fine sights down there, visiting the local opera house. I'm sure the local member will make them at home. It is a fabulous part of the country, and Labour, when it took through the Select Committee process the Waitaki River Plan legislation, made absolutely sure that the Select Committee went down to Aomaru because there was a good MP locally then, the Honourable David Parker, because the Labour Party believes in having good local consultation. So I'd encourage the Select Committee to follow that model, to get down and speak to the people in Aomaru and make sure that all of those local views are taken into consideration. On the matter of asset sales, as we close, the Dr Nick Smith mentioned asset sales. Well, there is feeling about these assets. There is concern that there's a potential here to privatise things that should not be privatised. And we think that sunlight will be a great disinfectant here. These things should be examined, they should be looked at, and the local community who indeed are concerned about asset sales, those I've spoken to, and I'd encourage them to get down to Dunedin this coming Saturday to the march, which will leave the dental school at 11 a.m, to express their discontent with the government that wants to sell the assets. But in Oamaru, if the Select Committee comes down, they'll have their say on this issue as well. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Louise Upston.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I'm very pleased to